Great. I think we are right at 7:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. A big welcome to everyone. You are in the right place. This is Trauma-Informed Teaching and Learning Online. We are going to be talking tonight about principles of trauma-informed teaching and learning. We really want to give you practical tools that you can walk away with and use, and we have a one-pager that you can also continue to look at and think about and modify for your own work. It sounds like we have our colleagues from all over here joining us tonight. And also, we have an emphasis on self-care, thinking about our own self-care and how we can also promote the self-care of our colleagues and our students. A validation to you all, we have seen the outpouring of support from educators across the nation, across the globe, supporting each other as we really navigate these uncharted waters. I know many have lots of different struggles and worries right now, and for each of us it is different. And we extend our compassion and understanding as we've been seeing everyone do online. So hopefully this will be helpful tonight and you will see this as another community of support for you. So let me pass it over to Matthea to talk a little bit about our closed captioning that we are using tonight. It's at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you so much, Johanna. So let me show you this next slide here. So we are trying out auto captioning, live auto captioning in this session. We're using this tool in Google Slides. It's a free tool. And the way that it works is it only picks up the microphone of the person who is doing the screen sharing. So you'll see me and Johanna passing back the screen sharing throughout this session, and that's why we're doing that. If you ever want to try it yourself, here's a little screen grab of what it looks like. We are using the medium text size and the bottom text position. So if you like what you see, maybe give it a try sometime when you're using Google Slides. Now, we should say this is not going to meet the standards for ADA compliance. It just isn't sophisticated enough yet with these live auto captioning tools. But you know, if you have someone in your class who has an accommodation for being hard of hearing or needing captioning or something, definitely work with your Office of Disability Services. For example, at Columbia, our Office of Disability Services arranges live captioners to be at every live online class session. So we wouldn't use live auto captioning to meet any kind of accommodation. But there might be other reasons that it could be helpful. So for example, we're all at home or in many of us are in shared spaces. I guess I shouldn't say all of us, but many of us are in shared spaces. There might be other folks making noises in the background and you might not catch every word. So just like how in a noisy environment, you'll see if there's a TV playing, there's often closed captioning. It can be kind of helpful. So we've got that going on, and we hope that it will help if you get suddenly distracted and you miss something real quick, or just find some support from that. So I will pass back over to Johanna, who will grab the screen sharing and the captioning back over. Ooh, and you are muted.
Shoot, there we go. All right, thanks, Matthea. So this is our overview for this evening. We're gonna start with resilience and self-care, thinking about how we are taking care of ourselves so we can take care of others. Then go into the trauma-informed approach, talk about principles around that, and then practical ways that you can use that. Then we'll wrap up and have time for a Q&A, and really want to also hear from your wisdom and experience throughout this. So welcome, we love chatting, we find it really engaging. We might pick up one of your brilliant ideas and thread it through what we're talking about. So feel free, use that Zoom chat. We find that it really helps with engagement, and hearing all of your voices and ideas only adds to our presentation. You can also tweet throughout this session if you are a tweeter, and our tweet handle here at Columbia SSW. Like we said at the beginning, this is part of a webinar series, and it sounds like some of you all were here last night and got the basics of online student engagement. Tonight we are in webinar 2, Trauma-Informed Teaching and Learning, and this, we did a similar series last week, so we are continuing this week with the same webinars, just in the evening, wanting to try to make the time accessible for everyone. Tomorrow we have webinar 3 on inclusive online teaching and teachable moments in online classrooms. There was a panel last week of instructors, and you can watch that online. So the recordings and the slides, if you click on this link, are all there. A couple of notes about today's session. Last week we used Adobe Connect, and this week we are using Zoom. So if you'd like to see the difference, you can check it out. You can look at the recordings on the YouTube channel, and there's also the direct link there. And it looks like we've got Taylor, thanks, putting these links in the chat. So if people want to click on them, they can save them there. We are covering general principles rather than teaching specific platform tools. We really want this to be platform neutral. If you're using Microsoft Teams, if you're using Adobe Connect, Zoom, all different platforms, we're trying to make these ideas platform neutral for whatever you might be using. And reach out to your institution's IT support for help for particular tools, if that is possible for you. All of this was based on a 6-hour intensive workshop that we did back in August of last year on power, trauma, and grading. So you can also take a look at our materials from that workshop there. So we've been thinking about this for a little while and feel that trauma-informed teaching, regardless of kind of societal circumstances, that is very important. So even before this global health crisis, we were thinking about and using these in our online campus. My name is Johanna Creswell Báez. I'm the manager of course development at Columbia University School of Social Work. I'm also an adjunct assistant professor who tries to thread these ideas through in everything I do. I just finished up a class on immigrants and families. My research is in this area, and just really important topics that I think can be beneficial for students. Let me pass it over to Matthea. Great.
Great, thanks, Johanna. Let me turn these captions back on. All right, here we go. So my name's Matthea Marquart. I'm the Director of Administration for the online campus here at Columbia School of Social Work, and I'm also an adjunct lecturer. And to give you the context of where we're coming from, we're situated in the Columbia School of Social Work online campus, which launched in fall of 2015. And we had our first graduates in May of 2017. So it's really nice to be able to take what we've learned over the years and share it with folks at a time when it can be useful. What's in it for you for coming to this session? Well, we hope that you will learn some useful practical ideas about trauma-informed teaching and learning principles and how you can specifically apply them now that most schools have gone online. And we also just encourage you to continue typing in that chat and sharing with each other. We'd love to hear you share your experiences and ask questions, and we really want this to be valuable so you can add to your toolkits. We are going to share, lots of ideas and principles, but we do want to just say up front, it's not intended to add additional pressure or add any kind of expectation that anyone is going to be perfect right now. No one's perfect anyway, ever. But especially now, we really want to acknowledge that everyone is trying really hard. We have been so inspired, as Johanna said, by educators really doing their best. And everyone's balancing so much. And many folks are very quickly transitioning to online for the first time and transitioning mid-semester. So we are so appreciative of the efforts that you're making for your students and that you're here learning about these things, and we don't want to add any pressure or expectation to be perfect. So for the chat, you can see that if you're not getting the chat automatically popping up, Zoom looks different for different users depending on your computer and the age of your computer and which version of Zoom you have installed, or if you're using a mobile device. So there's a chat window that looks kind of like a cartoon talk bubble. So you can click on that and it opens up the chat. And then if you click on all panelists and attendees, that will let you chat with everybody. And we'd love to hear what's your institution and something that you are grateful for today. And then Kristen is also going to open up a poll for us. Great, thank you, Kristen. Great, so Maria is joining us from Columbia. Annie is joining from Florida State University, grateful for rain that washed away the blanket of pollen. Yes, as an allergy sufferer myself, I would also appreciate the blanket of pollen going away. Yep. Joanna's grateful for her 2-year-old. Nancy's grateful for all the healthcare workers in the country. Yep. Josie grateful for sunshine. Awesome. Christiane is grateful for your health. Brian is grateful that we had some good weather to work out in. Great. Monica is grateful for a beautiful day. Olivia is grateful for your children and spending time with them. Samantha's grateful for the beautiful day and technology. Yeah. Yep. Taylor, I am envious of your balcony to get fresh air. It's the small pleasures in life these days. Yep. Linda's grateful for being here tonight. Yep. Fatima, hi. Great. Good to see you. Kathy is grateful for more time with your family. Yep. Agata, grateful for your job, especially as you're hiding away. Thank you. It's really nice to see everyone sharing in the chat, so thank you very much for that. And I'm going to end the polls here. So we've got a whole range, and I'll share the results with you. And the poll keeps jumping back and forth between my two screens. That's why my head's moving like that. So some folks are very comfortable, some are neutral, some are uncomfortable. So we've got a nice range here. All right, welcome everyone. All right, so if you ever have trouble with the polls, there's this poll icon that looks like a bar chart. So if you click on that, the polls will show up, but it looks like folks were able to access them. And I'd love to hand back over to Johanna, who is going to take over the screen share and take over the captioning.
Great, and I unmuted myself first.
Nice.
Right, it is always a continual learning curve with our technology, so we like to model that too. Next, turning our attention to resilience and self-care, and I'm thinking with our wide range of people having experience with trauma-informed learning and approaches, that maybe you also, there's a wide range around self-care too. We want to, again, notice and really put out there the difficult times that we are all in, and that these are not normal times. There is clear uncertainty, and it is normal to feel anxious and stressed. So thinking about how we normalize this for our students that we're working with, our clients that we're working with, and also hold our strength, that we are resilient. We can prioritize supporting each other. This is another place, right? We're all coming together to get support and be in virtual community. We can be flexible to learn together in this new normal. Just again, echoing what Matthea said, right? We are not looking for perfection. We're looking for grace and understanding and compassion. Definitely a lot of self-compassion. And thinking about how, for our own selves, what is that brings warmth and support. And it might not always be easy or come be possible for us depending on our circumstances. So letting each other know that we are there for him. And there's a link down here in the chat. It was an Inside Higher Ed article on more ideas to help think about instilling hope and holding that. So again, holding this range that we are clearly stressed, we are anxious, these are not normal times, and we are also resilient, holding those two pieces. This was posed in a workshop last week down here at UT Austin School of Social Work. I was not there, but I, of course, had technology and they were posting all the slides, so I got to see what they were talking about and learning from them virtually, as we're doing a lot of these days. And they posed the question, what has not changed as a result of this crisis? And it was from a solution-focused lens. And I thought this might be an interesting question. We're going to try to model ideas throughout this that you can use with your students, with whomever you work for and with. So type in the chat, what has not changed as a result of this crisis? The beautiful pictures that you're seeing, I tested this out with my family, and photo credit to my mom. She texted me back these pictures from her garden. She is an avid gardener, and she said her garden had not changed. So feel free, type in the chat here. What has not changed, thinking of our resiliency in these incredibly difficult times. Kristen is asking, are we giving our students that same compassion? I'm hearing they're being overwhelmed. Yes, great point, right? All of this is to remind each other of how we can up that level of compassion, right? Definitely encouraging that. So for Dana, the sun is singing, the birds are chirping, right? Student energy, so still seeing that passion for learning. Maybe it looks a little bit different. Who we are at our core, our commitment to our students for Monica. My kids' goofiness, right? Still starting every day with a walk. What are some of these routines that are promoting our own self-care? Got us talking about her dog, right? Capacity for love, that's beautiful. Your ongoing connection with your family and friends, but now it's just more online. Yeah, my 2-year-old is having his online school lessons, and that has just been fascinating. So interesting, right? He's still connecting with his teachers, but it looks very different. Nature, you guys are so many wonderful things. Teenagers, exercise, lots of different ideas. So thinking about this, if this is an exercise, maybe midway in your class, or if you're a social worker, midway in your work with others, to think about this together. Self-care, always a work in progress for myself. I know it's the utilization of skills and strategies to support our physical and emotional well-being. And we really want to promote an approach and a self-care practice that works for you, that feels right and works for yourself. So think about it. Is it like a 1-minute quick, deep breath for yourself? Is it taking a look? I've got pictures here of my family and my kiddos, doing a quick look there in a moment. Is it those, looking out at nature, exercise like you were talking about? So seeing what works and seeing what works right now. Many of us are in very different circumstances, not being able to go outside as much. So thinking about if you need to work on resetting those intentions. And radical self-care, really interesting work there around being intentional and frequent, purposeful, and disengaging from activities that deplete you. So really looking at what is difficult and deciding if that is something that's going to help promote your self-care. We really, there's links down there. One of our professors actually wrote this blog post here about radical self-care and decolonization. So check that out along with a Huffington Post article. We need to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our students. So thinking about how you are resetting those intentions of self-care so that you can be somewhat available to your students, right? I don't want to give that 100% expectation because that is just not where we're at right now in these really difficult times. Let me pass it over here to Matthea. We want to hear some more from you all on what you're doing for self-care. So passing over the share to her.
Thank you, Johanna. So we would love to hear your ideas and help you learn from each other's ideas. What is one self-care strategy or tool or activity that you are using these days? Ooh, VJM, Tai Chi. Great, that's something I've always wanted to pick up, but I have never tried it. Annie cooking at home. Maria stretches every night. Olivia gardening. Josie stepping away from work and getting outside at least once a day. Nancy baking. Good. All right, what else do we have? Martin setting a schedule routine. Rochelle, yoga and gratitude journaling. Yes, gratitude journaling can be really protective. It's a great way to change your mindset. Kathy, puzzles. We've got another vote for gardening. Yep. Samantha, walk outside. Dancing to cartoon videos with the kids. That does sound really fun. Great, hot baths. We got us sewing masks to donate. That's really nice. Great, I see exercises back up here, hiking, appreciative journaling, Zoom happy hours, yep. Binge watching favorite TV shows. Wonderful. All right, so one idea we'd like to share with you, this comes from the School of Social Work at SUNY Buffalo, is to create an emergency self-care plan. So some of these ideas that you're sharing here, maybe learning from each other from the ideas that you've shared. So kind of a framework for this is thinking about when things get tough, what is in your emergency self-care plan? And it's kind of broken down into what to do, what to think, and what to avoid. So if you make a list of things that will be good for you and people you can contact for support and positive things to say to yourself and who and what to avoid, can be really helpful to just have that as a go-to if you're getting to a feeling of being overwhelmed or just find yourself needing a plan that you can go to have thought about it ahead of time. And we really like this quote from Bell Hooks. So to teach in a manner that respects and cares for the souls of our students is essential if we are to provide the necessary conditions where learning can most deeply and intimately begin. So thinking about our souls, the compassion that we've been talking about, the self-care, it's really important to take care of ourselves, as Johanna said, to be able to help take care of our students and be there for our students. So self-care is really important. Yep, and Olivia, great. I'm glad you're interested in the slides. We will post them, and maybe Taylor could repost that link that has the slides and recordings so far as well, because we're going to continue posting the recordings and slides to one central location so that you can have them for reference. And we really welcome you to share them too. All right, so we're going to go into trauma-informed teaching and learning. So thinking about the impact of trauma, and pretty much all of us are experiencing trauma right now, and most people have experienced trauma in the past too. It results in fundamentally reorganizing the way that our mind and brain manage perceptions. So it really has a very strong impact. And when you think about your own ability to focus as one example, Kristen's going to bring up a quick poll for us. We just want to see Are you having a harder time right now focusing on or completing tasks? So I'm seeing lots of votes coming in. Yep. And I'll just give it another minute, or not a whole minute, but most folks have voted. So I'm gonna end and share. So you can see that most folks are saying yes, you're having a harder time focusing or completing tasks. Some folks are saying no. And so you can see there's a variety in the way that we react to trauma, and we all react differently to different situations, and that will be true of your students too. So I'm going to close that. And big takeaway, so it is very normal if you're experiencing this, and your students probably are as well. Thinking about other ways that trauma shows up in classes. So you might see students maybe being a little more absent than they usually would be. They might have more emotional ups and downs. They might be more anxious or nervous about taking risks. They might be more worried about deadlines or group speaking, or just different things that they maybe would be nervous about normally in class. They might really feel a heightened sense of anxiety or fear about. They might feel angry, and that might show up in class too. Or they might withdraw and not participate. So there's a lot of normal trauma reactions that you can see in classes. And if you're seeing this in your students, it's not your fault. So that can help normalize seeing your students in this way. It's not that you're doing something wrong, it's that everyone's experiencing trauma right now. So I'm going to hand back over to Johanna to talk about a trauma-informed approach. So she will get the screen share back. Great. And remember to unmute.
Thanks. So thanks, Matthea. I am definitely seeing a range in the students that I'm working with. So I think it's really good to keep reminding ourselves of that and thinking of ways that we're checking in and asking about how they're doing, knowing that people deal with trauma in many different ways. Looking at SAMHSA and their definition of a trauma-informed approach, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It is a program, an organization, a system that realizes the impact of trauma, that recognizes the signs and symptoms of trauma, and responds by integrating these into your classroom, into your work, your procedures, your practices, and that we actively resist to re-traumatize. And I found this really helpful to kind of go back to and think about how I'm doing each of these R's in my work. We have a link here too. I don't know if Agata or Taylor could also put that link to the SAMHSA work on that. Trauma-informed teaching, so taking those principles of trauma-informed approaches and applying them to learning has been going on for a little bit. So, late 1990s, thinking about this shift towards empowerment, voice and choice with our students, so a learner-centered approach. Shifting the power from the teacher as the sole expert to the teacher as facilitator. So allowing students to also be experts and learning from them and having them present on pieces and talk about it and getting their expert opinion on the topics you've been covering. And it's all been a part of this movement towards considering the distress suffered by students faced with upsetting content. And the work around this area is a little bit, there's lots of different thoughts around this about how much you do a trigger warning or don't do a trigger warning. And that is saying that there might be, that you're going to talk about content that could be upsetting, but a lot of this kind of came out of these different two thought areas. Trauma-informed educational practice came from a clinical practice, and I'm also a clinician. So this has always made a lot of sense to me, but I think is really applicable to any discipline that you teach. So it came Maxine Harris and Roger Fowlett. They're the pioneers of trauma-informed approaches. And two colleagues at the University of Buffalo School of Social Work really took these theories and applied it to education. Dr. Lisa Butler and Dr. Janice Carrillo, who was formerly at the University of Buffalo and is now at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. And we feel honored to call her a colleague. A lot of the work that we're going to continue to present for the rest of our time tonight in the webinar really comes from pioneering work that Janice has been doing, Dr. Carrillo, over the last couple of years. So hopefully her ears are ringing that we're giving her a lot of shout outs for her amazing work. And she defined trauma-informed in education as understanding the ways in which violence, victimization, and other forms of trauma can impact all members of a community, and looking to minimize the possibilities of re-traumatization and maximize the possibilities of educational and professional success. She makes a very important kind of distinction that the goal of trauma-informed educational practice is to remove possible barriers to learning, not to remove traumatic, sensitive, or difficult material. So we're going to talk about what is going on right now, the difficulties. We're going to leave some space balancing it with what we are teaching, but we are really going to hold the complexity that we are all in together right now and the trauma that we are experiencing. So thinking about removing these possible barriers to learning and thinking about how people can best really support their learning and education. Before we go into our practical tips and tools for thinking about how you all could use this, we wanted to do a short little check-in, right? We've been talking a lot, checking in, voice and choice, and you have the choice to choose either the blue circle question to answer, one thing that has brought you hope, the orange circle, one thing that has been difficult, the purple, one act of kindness you have seen done, or the green, one tasty snack you have had recently. And type in the chat, you can put the color first, like blue, purple, orange, or green, and then type your answer. This is also a great kind of icebreaker you can do at the beginning of a class or in your work, or maybe a midway point to kind of bring up energy, get people checking back in. When we're online, we want to think about ways that we're upping that engagement. So let's see, we're getting some people typing in here. Are your check-in choice, purple Samantha, so the act of kindness. And that is all of our instructors stepping up and helping each other is what you're seeing, Samantha. That's great. Kristen, it was actually her idea, the one tasty snack. She's been eating a lot of Oots chips. Thanks, there we go. Taylor has been, let's see, eating apples with peanut butter. Brian, orange, network outages at the most inconvenient times. So kind of putting that difficult piece out there. And you see we're holding the range too in this exercise. And that was really purposeful when Matthea and I were creating this and thinking about it. Let's see here, we have green, chocolate chip cookies. We have another orange, the difficulty. My brother has needed to move in with me and I was not prepared for that. Yeah, lots of people are dealing with different home situations and people moving in and smaller spaces. So yeah, we got some ice cream here. Orange, challenge changing jobs. So during this difficult time, added stress feels very magnified. And we think about our students, maybe they might have similar things of someone moving in with them, of their work study job changing a bit, or them losing employment. Let's see here. Nice. CJ helped get feminine hygiene products to women who can't afford them right now. So thinking about the financial burden on many people. Kathy, a restaurant was offering free meals that families could purchase to give to those in need. Great, that act of kindness, maybe that purple. Seeing some more ice cream here, yes. Okay. And Monica, orange, not being able to see my elderly mom in assisted living. Yes, people are away from loved ones, and I know that caregivers aren't being allowed into hospitals right now, and really that is weighing heavy on my heart, is those who have been disconnected due to this. So thanks for sharing, Monica. Looks like Annie was resonating with that, and Matthea too. All right. So practical tips and tools, what we're going to move into this last part, and hopefully you guys are going to give us some ideas. You're going to take away some of these practical tools and ideas. A trauma-informed school program or department, and you see these R's again, right? So looking from the SAMHSA, how we are recognizing our trauma-informed work, kind of a similar model of realizing that many students and us as educators and staff have experienced at least one trauma. And now we have a global trauma happening, so complex trauma. We're going to recognize those symptoms when we're feeling exhausted, when we're feeling really frustrated, and that other groups of people might be more vulnerable. And thinking about that across populations and contexts. We want to bring up our level of respect. I'm trying to do a lot of self-talk in this, right? To kind of say we are all trying our best right now to those who I'm working with and our students. I'm going to use empathy a lot and say that's really hard. And I saw a lot of empathy there around the different orange circle for those who shared and were brave to share those difficult pieces that are going on for them. And then I'm going to resist policies and practices that are re-traumatizing. So here is Dr. Carrillo's outline of these key principles. So she saw these 7 different principles for trauma-informed teaching and learning. So we need physical, emotional, social, and academic respect. We need trustworthiness and transparency, support and connection, collaboration and mutuality. You might be feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do all of these, and it's okay again. Just thinking about how maybe picking up a few of these ideas to thread through, so that what are some new activities that you can do that really asks for your students' voice, that gives them choice, for them to feel more empowered. We're going to hold cultural, historical, and gender contexts and support that resilience, growth, and change. So we took this, and there's a one-pager, and we could put the link, looks like Taylor, thanks. We have a one-pager on trauma-informed teaching and learning and examples that we did back in August on how to apply these different principles in your teaching. But we reworked it given the global crisis to really think about all of the educators that are moving rapidly online, how new this is, the high levels of complex trauma that we are all going through, to try to make it applicable and usable and supportive. So here is the link for the updated one-pager that is applying these practices during a global health crisis. And maybe Taylor or Agata, you can type in the chat that link too for this one-pager. We're going to walk through some ideas that we have on this, and we want to hear during this and have it be interactive. So if this sparks ideas that you are already doing, type in the chat, because I know you all are amazing. And also, if it gives you new ideas that maybe you could use in this coming week or these coming months, please type those in too. So just something that comes into your head, we would love to hear those. And there is Taylor posted this link to the one-pager. So First, looking at physical, emotional, social, and academic respect, acknowledge and normalizing and discussing these difficult topics. Asking about what's going on in each other's communities. I think we are each in different circumstances depending where we're at, and kind of understanding what's happening locally. Providing content warnings that you know that this is difficult to discuss. If people need to take a moment just to look away or have a quick coping tool, what is it that they're going to use? Listen and empathize. Acknowledge those feelings of feeling overwhelmed and helpless. And think about how to balance this time, right? So maybe how much time will you give and provide? Is it the first 10 minutes? Is it the first 15 minutes? Is it a little bit longer? So being really dynamic for what works with your group of students that you're working with. So really trying to start with where they are at. Trustworthiness and transparency, creating routines and rituals. From my nonprofit work at WDECO, Children's Services, consistency and predictability is so important with the youth and the families that we work with, and it just makes sense too in our trauma-informed teaching. So creating structured breaks, creating a class agenda that is clear, being consistent with that. Maybe even there's some rituals that you do the same thing at the beginning, have your check-ins, right? Maybe you end with something, and we sometimes end with validations or positive, but thinking about what really works for your group of students and your academic topic. Then support and connection. We've been saying it a lot. We've been doing check-ins throughout this. Can you use polls to check in? Can you do a quick check-in in the chat? Let your students know you're there for them. Maybe it's an email announcement to everyone. Again, do what works for you. I know we are all exhausted, and think about, what is that level of check-in that's going to work for you. And I see, let's see here, Lisa is typing in that she opened her last class with the best clips from a movie, The Silver Linings Playbook. And then she's having silver lining moments to begin and end. What a beautiful, kind of consistent and predictable schedule. So very trauma informed. That is great. Terry's saying that this is really dovetailing with transformative learning, especially when responding to reacting to disorienting dilemmas, as many of us are around. Feel free, Terry, too, to type in the chat anything that kind of sticks out about transformative learning so we can learn from you too. Nice, Lisa, they actually asked for it at the end of class, like, where's that closing moment? Yeah, right, structures, routines, just like we're trying to set up those routines of our own self-care, can be really beneficial in the classroom. Fatima is talking on the support and connection and check-ins. She sent an announcement of mindfulness techniques, and then you did that with the class and the students loved it. Yeah, thinking about what works for your students, try different things, right? If one thing doesn't land so great, try something else. And the last one here, green, collaboration and mutuality. Have class members provide input, share power, and make decisions. And you saw, I was just modeling that with Terry. I said, tell me more about this transformative learning, right? So get their input, empowerment, invite them to collaborate. It looks like, Monica, my class is asynchronous, so not live, and you've actually gone the distance to, looks like, plan a live Zoom class, which is great for connection. And you already have to submit something that brings you joy. I like that. Yeah, you're doing so many of these pieces already. All right, let me pass this back over to Matthea to do our last few examples here. And she is taking
All right,
the share.
thank you. Great. Oh, wonderful. I see CJ is sharing a resource here. Thank you very much, CJ. It's great. So continuing on with some principles and examples, and please do continue sharing your ideas and resources in the chat too. So empowerment, voice, and choice. So like with the choice check-in that Johanna did earlier, giving folks a choice of how to respond to questions, or maybe a choice of how to do assignments. For example, for the class that I'm teaching this semester, the final assignment was going to be a paper and then a presentation, but we talked with students about how we were going to adapt the course to the new situation, and we turned it into a choice between a paper or a presentation being graded with the same rubric. So just building in some choices where students can feel like they can figure out what works best for them in their situation. We also did it a choice. It was going to be group projects, but folks' schedules have really changed a lot. And so they have the choice of if they want to do it individually or as a group, just as an example for an assignment. Cultural, historical, and gender contexts. So respecting everyone's diverse experiences and identities, and then recognizing that particular populations may be impacted in specific or intense ways. So right now there's a huge rise in hate crimes against people who look Asian, and providing support and compassion can be really important. I'm married to somebody who is Muslim, and so his experience, his community after 9/11, he's been really coaching me on how to adapt to the intensity of hatred against my particular ethnic background. And that's something that we can keep an eye out with for ourselves and our communities and our students too. Resilience, growth, and change. So recognizing our own collective strength and individual strength and resilience, which we've done with a few of the activities here. So practicing compassion, Christiana mentioned that earlier up front, practicing compassion with our students, conveying as much warmth as we can in our communication with them, verbally or asynchronously in announcements, in feedback when you're grading assignments, using hopeful and optimistic language. So maybe graduation might not happen in person this year, but we hope that it will be rescheduled, or we look forward to a virtual celebration, things like that. And pointing out what was done well. So it's always very helpful to point out what was done well, but these days, a criticism can feel doubly or triply hard. So really helping lift up our students with noticing what they're doing right, maybe more than what we're noticing that wasn't right. And this leads into grading. So colleges and universities right now are making big changes with grading for the semester, and you'll have to follow your own institution's guidelines for that. At Columbia, for example, this spring, all courses are now pass-fail. So, and Columbia allows a lot of instructor discretion, so how the course looks now that it's pass-fail is really up to individual instructors, but other institutions may have less freedom in that way, so really follow your own university or institution guidelines, and then communicate them very clearly and openly with students, and that will connect to trustworthiness and transparency. Also being flexible about assignments and deadlines, letting them know what is the most essential thing to do that week. So maybe there's 5 readings due this week, but there's really only one that you care the most that students do. So identify for students and share with them, that's the one that you want them to really do. And then attendance policies. Normally, for example, I take points off if students are late, but I've stopped doing that this semester because I'm happy if they just made it to class. We usually have a 10-point rubric for each class session on participation, and we're just doing complete and complete now this semester because everyone's experiencing such challenges that, I expect everybody to learn, but to support them to learn in a compassionate and trauma-informed way, I just want to be realistic about what's on everyone's plates right now. This last note, everyone's stressed right now. As we saw, about 2/3 of the folks here are having more trouble focusing than usual. And so you might need to repeat yourself multiple times with your students, maybe have the same message on the chat and say it out loud and have it on the slide, just because it's not that students aren't trying or don't want to learn, it's just everyone's brains are kind of not the way they used to be. So for example, in my class, we have community agreements and we revise them to add forgive each other. We're all dealing with a lot right now. And so that's actually one of our ground rules for the class this semester. So thinking about other ways that you might adapt your grading, I'd love to see in the chat if you have any things that you'd like to share or questions that you have about grading. And I'll also share, once Columbia moved to pass-fail, the very next class, we looked at all the assignments that were due for the rest of the semester, and we said, what's realistic? So for example, there were, it's a 7-week course, and we had 8 discussion forums that tied to the readings, and we decided to make them, first of all, they're graded complete, incomplete, and second of all, students can choose 4 out of the 8 to do. So then they're exempt from the other 4, or they can choose to do them all. So I'm in this fortunate position where my students really advocated to have a fundraising course. They really, really wanted to learn this material to the point that they advocated to add the course, which didn't exist before. So I know that they're very motivated, but also I know that they're dealing with a lot. And so if they do all the assignments, that's wonderful. If they can't do all of them right now, that is very, very understandable. So we're trying to adapt. Yep, what is realistic given everything? Yep, so I'm keeping an eye out. And also just noting flexibility with deadlines. So I'm going to switch hats. So this semester I'm taking a couple classes. I've got the fortunate privilege of having tuition exemption as part of my job. So I'm taking advantage of that, and I'm taking a couple online classes. And I am not on time with my assignments right now. I will just say it's so from the student perspective, also, like, I know what's realistic and what's not realistic. And I've missed a couple deadlines myself, and I'm not judging myself about that. I'm exercising self-compassion and just communicating with my instructors about, we've got a lot going on in our department right now. I am not going to have the same amount of time as I usually would have to devote to homework. So, and they've been very flexible with me too. All right, so I'm going to pass back over to Johanna to do some wrap up and Q&A.
All right, great. I think it's always fun to hear about you and your class, from the classes side, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's important for us to continually draw on that empathy of being a student, and to think about, right? We have so much on our plates, just in general. Deadlines and I'm late to things. I can't find my keys. I just poured my cup of water and now I don't know where it's at. So I don't know if anyone else is resonating with that here. Let's see here,
I'm just
Brian.
going to jump in and ask Johanna to hit that captioning button.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks. Okay. Let's see here, Brian. Flexibility on due dates also resonates. It's especially important. You're working with a large military population. Yeah, so understanding that their work and the workload of your students. So really putting yourself in your students' shoes and thinking about that. Let's hear a question. How do you balance maintaining integrity around content and course competencies with being reasonable around making adjustments? I think my students wish I would throw everything out the window. It is definitely a balancing act, as you have for sure felt, it sounds like. And thinking about that question, like, what is realistic? Like, what is needed here to show the competencies? And really sitting down, with your syllabus, with your readings, with your assignments, and thinking about what does feel reasonable, given everything that's going around. And colleagues have been really helpful too. I'm bouncing ideas off of colleagues to ask them, like, what do you think about this assignment? Should I be cutting it back a little bit? And yes, we decided that 10-page was going to go to 5-page. We're planning actually our summer class. I'm going to teach social work practice with families, and we had a long paper, and we're talking right now. I'm getting support around cutting it back. So thinking about that balance, very important. Annie Is there any concern that students completing their degrees at this time will be less prepared or equipped than previous generation of social workers? It is definitely a concern that we continue with like those core pieces of our teaching, right, to prepare them. I know for field, right, it's worrisome, but accommodations are having to be made, right, around this. And thinking about doing the best we can in our online classes, and understanding that there is this really new normal. Matthea, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Annie's question there.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. I just typed in the chat. I think students always learn from how we treat them because we're sort of modeling, but especially now, they're all in crisis and we're in crisis, and they are learning from how we're making adjustments. So some of them will go and become educators. Some of them will go and work with clients directly. And the way that they see us working with them is a learning that I wish they didn't have to learn that right now, but they're learning. There's like a meta learning or a parallel process kind of thing happening where they're learning more about crisis right now than past generations of social work students had to learn. So they might be getting a little bit less in the formal, like reading the amount of journal articles that students have read in the past in a particular semester. But on the other hand, students in past semesters didn't have to deal with a global pandemic at the same time as their studies. So it's, there's always like a give and take. And I think that they will come out into the profession prepared with different skills maybe than previous generations, or I'm saying generations, but last year. So the social work grads last year had a completely different experience than the social work students who are graduating this year. And a lot of what they're learning about how we communicate during crisis, leadership during crisis, support, messaging, all these things are, they're actually valuable learning experiences too.
Mm-hmm. And in true parallel fashion, we're learning so much about ourselves too, right? We're growing as educators, as providers. This is really tasking us to, bring our self-care to the forefront, think of new ways, learn new technology, right? So we're growing too. And I love the idea Matthea put in the chat of, if it makes sense, how, involving your students, that voice and choice, and talking about how you're going to meet these requirements, right? And how you could still have key learning objectives while balancing the immense stress that we are all under. So we have a poll, and then we can also do some more Q&A chat. These are great comments and questions here. And let's see here, Kristen, if you wouldn't mind bringing up that poll. What is your comfort level with trauma-informed teaching and learning principles now? And while we're doing the poll too, chat, what's something new and helpful you learned that you think you'll be able to use? So typing in the chat, what is something new and helpful you learned in this session? And then we will also have our poll. So maybe you guys are thinking here, something that you can use. Great. And our poll, what is your comfort level now with using trauma-informed teaching and learning principles? Nancy is thinking about how to modify final assignments. Yeah, many of us, right, you're in the last stretch of your classes, last month and a half here. Help yourself, that's securing your own mask before helping others, right? Help yourself so you can help others. And then we have our poll here. It looks like we're we can broadcast the poll. It looks like many of you are continuing to feel very comfortable. More are feeling even comfortable. We have no more uncomfortable. So it looks like there has been some learning here. And Fatima is saying resist that re-traumatization, right? Really hold that we're all in a complex trauma situation, that we bring our own trauma, and this is compounding it. Terry, it will take a while to internalize it. Yep, think about it. That's the one-pagers are great. I print them out. I think about it. I'm planning my next class. I'm trying to think about ways to involve that, to use these practices. Nice. And the table, it sounds like a lot to discover and think about. That makes sense. Take your time again, right? In your own time, being compassionate, not needing to be perfect with all of this, with our teaching. Lisa, validation is not that not only it's okay to be flexible, but necessary right now, right? Maybe opening up your classes and talking about that we all need to be flexible with each other. And maybe we say that a few times, that repetition. Maria, addressing reasonable expectations, right? CJ, patience with everyone, including yourself. Yeah, I'm finding I'm really needing to do a lot of, for me, it's self-talk to kind of get that compassion and patience up. Great, yep. And Annie's going to use some of these questions with her students and fellows. That's great. So we have a couple of different links here, and again, we're going to be posting each of our slides and the recordings. We wanted to say a big thank you to you all for taking your time this evening, for thinking about this. We know that you guys are all doing wonderful work just in the fact that you are here and are thinking about this important work. We also have all of our references here. I know we're just at time here and we want to be respectful of that. We'll hang on here if there's any few more questions, but let me pass it over to Matthea. We are just again extremely thankful for your time and hope that you can use some of these resources.
Yes, I echo Johanna. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we've all got a lot on our plates these days, and it's just really wonderful to spend this time with you. And I appreciate how much you've shared in the chat and how much you've participated. And it's just been really wonderful, the effort that I can see that you're making for your students and the care you're bringing to your roles as educators. So thank you. And I hope to see some of you tomorrow for our final webinar.
Yes. All right. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you again, and continue to do the great work that you do.
Thank you. Also, if anyone has any questions, feel free to let us know in the chat and we'll hang out.
Yep, we're here.
Yep. Oh, Michael, hi. Thanks for joining us. All right, it looks like we don't have any questions. So, Kristen, if you want to stop the recording, thank you.